All right, we are live. The 15th day of the month of May. My name is Mike, and we have Paul Half Dollar here. Paul, how you doing this afternoon?
Doing good today, Mike. A lot of stuff going on again. Seems like we're just
If you
getting
shop on
bombed with
Amazon, you should use Wix.
the mother of all information overload bombs this week.
Yeah. So definitely, we can give it a second before we get going back and forth. Want to welcome some people in. As always, for those that are tuning in, let us know where you are watching from in the chat beneath us so we can give you a quick shout out and welcome you to the stream. And more importantly, if you have questions throughout this live stream, feel free to throw them in the chat and we'll try to get to them. And so that we don't miss them, if you can make sure you call us out with @SilverDoctor so that we'll see it because it'll light up on our end. So we'll know to make sure to address the question for you. And so let me actually check in with the chat and see who's tuning in. As of now, no one's bothered to comment yet, even though we have people here. But let's start at the beginning of the week. I want to go back to what happened, how last week ended, and the tweets that came out that then led to Monday morning being a very interesting day in reference to the Dow Jones and all the retaliation type talk. So, Paul, give me your thoughts on that, man. Like, was that the beginning? Was that strike one, or what? How bad can this thing get?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's certainly getting bad. It's certainly appearing that it's taking a turn for the worse. One of the things I was talking about is, we can basically say the trade war has been going on since 2016, right? Since President Trump was a candidate, he's been talking about trade and he's been talking about China.
Right.
Basically, we can say 2018 was about like a monthly escalation. This year seems like the tale of 2019 has been a weekly escalation in the trade war. Mm-hmm. But then just last week, we're seeing a daily escalation in the trade war.
Yeah.
Then just this week alone, we're seeing multiple escalations of the trade war every single day. I mean, it's just getting really out of control. I think it's by design. I think part of it by the design is to just completely bombard everybody with information overload, confuse them so they don't really understand the bigger pictures of what's going on here.
Yeah, I agree.
We can get into some of that bigger picture. I think a lot of the bigger picture has to do with the dollar, right? One of the things that came out on Monday was that China said, well, in addition to tariffs, in addition to not purchasing U.S. products, we can also start selling all these treasuries, right?
Yeah.
And, you go to, Treasury Department's website, they have over $1 trillion worth of U.S. treasuries, right? So they start dumping those treasuries. What are they going to do with that? They've been buying gold for the last 5 months. Central banks were on a gold buying spree last year. They're going to be buying gold with it.
Yeah.
And I thought about something else, too, because this just hit yesterday, and this is important. Yesterday, the Chinese propagandist media is talking about, we want this to be a people's war, right? This is going to be the Chinese people's war against the economy of the United States, in addition to, the geopolitical tensions and back and forth between Trump and Xi.
Yeah.
What that's telling me, right, is, what happened to the manufacturing sector in the United States? As factories closed down, China came in, they bought off all that, factory equipment, they shipped it back to China, they reverse engineered it. That's how they built up their manufacturing sector. Well, guess what? If it's a people's war this time around, what's going to happen? Well, since the U.S. economy we know is about to hit a brick wall, and since we know the retail apocalypse is real, then I think that the Chinese are literally going to go on a massive discounted buying spree, and that could right there, by the selling of treasuries and by going on a buying spree of goods that are in the United States that were imported from China, that right there can spark off the hyperinflation, and it could happen quick.
Hold on. Okay, so you say going on a selling spree of treasuries, but yet going on a buying spree of assets here in our country. So I actually just put up an article about this People's War. And so you're referring to like real estate, like what type of assets would they be looking to buy in your opinion?
Anything and everything. I would say not so much the real estate, because you can't take the real estate with you. So I'd be looking for gold. I'd be looking for silver. I'd be looking for copper. Anything that is stockpiled.
Yeah.
Also durable goods that are in the United States. And I'm talking all the way down to washing machines, televisions, computers, all of that stuff. Because, think about it this way, right? Mm-hmm. China as a national level, are they a currency manipulator? Are they not a currency manipulator? Are they a favored trading partner status? Are they not our favorite trading partner status? There's all this stuff going on.
Yeah.
But if it was started by the Chinese, by the people themselves, and they just go on a massive buying spree, you're talking about massive inflation in conjunction with the selling of treasuries. So technically, that's a way where the trade war could escalate into a hyperinflationary attack on the U.S. dollar, and it wouldn't even be Xi Jinping that would be getting the sole blame, because it would be the entirety of mainland China.
Yeah. Now, okay, so just let me add into that. So if they were to buy up sell off treasuries to liquidate, to get into dollars, to be able to buy things here, they would buy things of the greatest value, which would be gold, silver. So we're talking about either there being some type of run on, I guess, the COMEX. Would they test the COMEX to see if there's actually physical gold in the vaults there? Would somebody buy some contracts and ask for delivery type things? Or because I couldn't see people going to like little retail shops. I mean, they can buy out some of probably the biggest bullion dealers, SD Bullion, Atmex, all those big ones. But I think beyond that, I mean, buying washers and dryers and things that they produce themselves, probably, I mean, it would, and then to take it back or whatever, would just flood their economy with more stuff that they already have in XX already. So
yes and no.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, go ahead. No, yes and no. Go ahead.
Yes and no, because, the average standard of living for the average Chinese is still lower than in the United States. And they're still attempting to bring, millions and, hundreds of millions of people, for that matter, out of poverty into a flourishing middle class.
Yeah.
So would it flood the market? Potentially. But on the other hand, it would get goods out of the United States, which would bring up those inflationary pressures. At the same time, you're seeing a pickup in monetary velocity. Mm. So, it's one of those things that could be a subtle backdoor direct attack on the dollar, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. As far as the question about gold and silver, definitely, especially at the dirt cheap prices they're at right now,
Yeah.
Silver is at the same price it was in 2006, basically. But as far as gold and silver, no. The COMEX, no, because I don't think there's any gold or silver at the COMEX, personally.
Right.
So the coin shops, yes. The large bullion dealers, yes. I think that is definitely something that is in play. So we'll have to see how it develops.
Yeah.
Another thing that was interesting that kind of ties into it, right, is this tweet that President Trump sent out on Monday.
Yeah.
And it was in relation to China and the trade war. Let me see where that. Do you have that tweet?
So we got China will be pumping money into their system. That tweet.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So let me put it on the screen. I do have it. Yep, it's right here.
I can actually see it. Okay. China will be pumping money. I mean, how more explicit can you get, right?
Yeah.
Let me find the exact phrase that I used today. But basically, he's saying, what if our Federal Reserve did that, mm-hmm. right? He's saying, well, why can't we just pump money? I don't know how people aren't seeing that this is basically a direct call to hyperinflate the dollar away. In other words, he's saying, I'm going to send the U.S. dollar on its parabolic hyperinflationary death spiral. Right? That is essentially what Trump is saying when he fires off that tweet. Here's the funny thing about it, this is like the ultimate gold and silver bullish tweet that could ever be, right? Because, we talk about, all these algorithms are programmed to parse words out of Twitter, and depending on the heading or the subject or the links in it, then they make their algo trades based on what words are coming out of Twitter. You can't get any more explicit than let's hyperinflate the dollar way and be more like China, right? And what happens to the price of gold? It's down $5 and silver's down 10 cents. So it's just like the level of absurdity that's going on here is just, like I said, these little truth nuggets are slipping under the surface because everybody's being bombarded with all this information, information overload, as I just started calling it.
Yeah.
And I think the reason is to try and make it seem like this whole thing is overly complex, mm-hmm. right? So, let's make it complicated so nobody can understand it. So then they just say, well, it's complicated, and that's such a convenient excuse, isn't it?
Yeah, interesting. So just looking at this, it says China will be pumping money into their system and probably reducing interest rates. And so that sounds like they would only be doing what we've already done, what we started initially with this whole QE. And so if China went on a QE spree, therefore that's to prop up their economy. Even though to my knowledge, I don't really cover Chinese economy that much, but I heard that their internal debt has went from 10 trillion to 40 trillion or something like that amongst themselves and stuff. So I'm thinking like that's all in-house. But what we've done is we've pumped and created and spread it out all over the world. So in matching that, hyperinflation definitely, but I would imagine, and here's what will be very interesting to see. is that with all these digits and paper floating around and excess and a lot more than what's going on now, how would they be able to maintain a $1,300 or less price in gold and a $15 silver price where, I mean, I'm sure it could be done. I don't see how, because who in their right mind would be willing to continue to hold on to something that literally comes off the print machine at an astronomical rate from both ends of the world, you know? So
exactly, you know, and they can't, because they don't have to get all of the West's gold, right? Mm-hmm. They only have to get as much as the West is willing to part with, because they're to the point where you say, I'm not giving away any more of my gold. I need a little bit of it for myself. Yeah. You know, today I called it, you know, it's a high stakes game of hot potato, and it's the US dollar that's the hot potato. That's the problem here. So yes, we've pumped out all this money, and, you know, with China threatening to sell treasuries, what does that mean? You know, treasuries are just dollars, right? Yeah. And, you know, the Federal Reserve is not expanding their balance sheet, right? Last we heard they were shrinking it, but then they decided to pause it because they got all nervous because the stock market was making, you know, overly rich people a little bit less overly rich, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, my point there is, that's a whole lot of dollars that are going to be coming back to the United States, and they're going to be looking for a place to go. And I think they're going to go into real things, real stuff.
Yeah,
right?
Good point. Now, I'm going to get into, I want to check in with the chat, because I'm sure we got some questions over there, because as normal, we can go back and forth.
Yes, welcome everybody to the show this week. Stuff. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, welcome everybody. We thank you for listening to us go back and forth. Now we're going to include you in with your thoughts and ideas. So, let me look over here. We got Ryan join us. We got Cherie. We got Dante. Mark. Let me see. It says, I'm sorry, I don't remember Trump calling for hyperinflation. That's ridiculous. So, Cherie, in reference to that statement, is us interpreting and deciphering this tweet that you see on the screen now in relation to the amount of money pumping or currency creation and the dropping of rates. Those two policies done in extreme measures, which he's referring to, could be hyperinflationary, because that'll be a lot of currency circulating, and therefore it has to go somewhere. So cost of living will go up and everything else will go up, but will the price of metals also go up, or will they be suppressed? So that's kind of what we're talking about for that. But
we talk about money printing. Well, he just kicked it up to a new level. Now it's not money printing. Now it's money pumping, right? I mean, that's like, you know, full on fire hose going.
Yeah. All right. So Mark says, honest question. Who would be buying the treasuries that China might purchase?
Nobody. That's the $1 million, that's $64,000 question, right? Because if the Fed is not expanding their balance sheet, right, the Fed is not buying extra, right? And we're talking about like $1.1 trillion worth of treasuries that China has. So nobody's going to be buying it, other than the Exchange Stabilization Fund is just going to print up the money to buy it. So, you know, this is why it is hyperinflationary, right? So, you know, and it's multifaceted, right? If you're talking about a people's war, you know, and if we can go down that road that I was suggesting by the Chinese going on a buying spree, if we're talking about President Trump wanting to emulate China and start pumping money, if we're talking about China selling U.S. treasuries, all of these things together are just one massively volatile mix.
Yeah, very good point there. Let me get back to some more questions. What this guy here says, sorry, might sell. Trump is knee deep in the swamp, pouring gasoline with a torch, getting ready to crash the market. Good way of putting it. Trump is steering the markets. Yeah, so another thing is, so I had a chance to interview David Modell, and I was talking about him being a trader and investor. I'm asking him, does he take into account what type of gyrations there might be in the markets based upon Trump's next tweet? And so I'm assuming there's a way of people out here are timing tweets, and depending on what the president says, because the market does move. Now, my question to you, Paul, would be, is there such a thing where, because no longer is the mainstream media used by our president to get the information out or share his thoughts. So can you see a time where he tweets out something so bold and outrageous that it could be the domino that causes things to ripple effect? Like he comes out with some type of tweet that just goes viral right away, or he's taken off Twitter altogether or something like that. Can you see something like that coming pretty soon or in the near future?
I can. I don't know if it would be for good or bad as far as what the effect would be and what it would specifically be. But yes, here's the thing about traders and moving markets and Twitter and stuff like that, right? Bloomberg, right? The foremost authority on everything finance. Bloomberg has a very expensive program called Bloomberg Terminal, right? And they stopped posting how much it costs. But the last time I checked a few years back, it was like $25,000 for a year. So this is an expensive program.
Yeah.
And basically what it is it's a direct line to the very best charts and the very best news feeds that come out. So when we talk about all this robo trading, all these HFT algorithms that are programmed to mathematically trade the markets based on high headlines, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the feed coming off a Bloomberg terminal, the algorithms crunching and parsing those words and then executing the trades based off of that. When it comes to Twitter, right, your average trader is not paying $25,000 a year to get the subscription to Bloomberg terminal, right? Yeah. So, they're relying on Twitter. Twitter's the most instant way to disseminate market moving news. And if we're talking about, market movers like President Trump, a tweet from President Trump can in fact move the markets. So, some of your smaller traders have written some algorithms, they call it black box trading and all this stuff. But some of these other traders have written these algorithms to parse the tweets as well. So yes, there could come a time where he could actually just say, we're done with the dollar. We're going back to the constitutionally required bimetallic gold and silver standard. And that would just be the end of it right there. And you're basically going to blow up the financial markets. Yeah. I don't think he'll do that because I think he's deep state and patriots clothing. So I don't think that's coming. But yes, something on that level could indeed happen on Twitter.
Yeah, I do agree. And so my thing would be, hoping that whatever, because one thing that does bother me, and I mentioned this a couple times this week as well, is that his tweets seem to be more blunt and just without conscious thought. Like he just thinks of something, he puts it out there, and I'm thinking like from a presidential standpoint, as the leader of this nation here, he's representing all of us. So whether we like it or not, we will be subject to the consequences of that tweet, and that's where I just can't. Oh man, is there a proper way of getting it done? Sure, but to be so somewhat arrogant and cocky towards this retaliation talk about China and stuff like that, because earlier he tweeted on how China is they walked away from the deal and that they are waiting on 2020 in hopes of getting somebody else, but I'm already going to win my second term. I'm thinking like that's pretty. I don't know if it's confident, cocky. I don't know. What would you call that?
I would call it a setup because the markets aren't prepared for him not to win, right? And I don't think he's going to win, right? I think it'll be interesting. We need to start compiling a list of people who think he's going to win 2020, people who think he's not going to win. I think it's by design, and the main reason that I think so is because I don't think that we can go another 6 years, without any of these, mass arrests or military tribunals in Guantanamo. We can't go another 6 years without anything actually happening. That would be swamp training. Mayors in Baltimore aren't going to cut it. That's not high enough on the totem pole. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it seems like if we're waiting on that, because I'm still waiting on that special investigation to his running mate, the one he beat. And so until I see that, I take everything with a grain of salt. So I think the best way to roll out some things would be in his last term, because he has nothing to lose, because he would have only one more. So we'll see. But yeah, man, let's get to some more tweets over here. What did I say? Tweets.
And one more thing about Trump, and before we move on, real quick, he was talking about that there's some chatter going around right now that he is likely to name Judy Shelton, right? I don't know exactly her background, but I know that she favors a gold standard, right? So there's some rumors out there that he's about to name Judy Shelton as a pick for the Federal Reserve, right? And she's a gold bug, right? She's a gold advocate. She favors a gold standard. Here's the thing about that, right? We saw what happened with Herman Cain, right? And we saw that he withdrew his nomination, right? My first question is, does anybody really think, right, with the way that we have our government in Washington and the way the Federal Reserve is acting right now, that they are going to even let a person that's a gold standard advocate get nominated to the Fed? Do people really think that? I do not think that at all whatsoever. So, if anything, he's throwing the people, he's throwing a bone to the people who think Trump's going to do something good that's good for gold, right? I've proven that he's not with evidence in a prior post. Can't remember the name of it. But, So that's a little bone that he's throwing out there to the sound money advocates.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing about that, right? Even if he would nominate her, and even if she would get appointed to the Fed, right? Well, who's to say she's not going to pull in Alan Greenspan, right? Alan Greenspan was the ultimate gold standard advocate. He was the ultimate gold bug, right? And he is, he's done himself personally at least 1,000, at least 100 of the 1,000 cuts that are coming to the U.S. dollar, and we're probably 999 cuts in, right? And if it's death by 1,000 cuts, well, guess what? The next one's, that's the one that's going to do it for us.
Yeah, and so I'm zooming in to that article about the young lady that's going to be considered for the Fed from Trump. And so it shows the little gold window. Prior to Nixon closing the gold window, the U.S. did not run a trade deficit. And so that's this whole issue we're talking about now with tariffs. It all has to do with trade. And so I'll touch on that in a minute, but it's just interesting. This caught my attention because the further we've gone from 1971, where gold was in the mix, the more indebted we've become and the more unbalanced things have been, to where the fact that President Trump is screaming we need fair trade and balanced trade. Balanced trade would not be in our favor because we wouldn't be able to send them debt units and get tangible goods at the rate that we're doing it. We would have to produce, and we don't do that. We don't do that enough. And what we do produce is not necessarily needed around the world. So what would be fair, and what would be fair trade balance in your opinion? Or is that to me that sounds like more of a illusion / false hope in and of itself? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are just oversimplification of it because, I'm not an expert on the macro geopolitical side of things.
Yeah.
But I will say this,